but still, obviously, the fundraising part of the campaign continues. It actually continues year-round, but the majority of fundraising happens during the month of and into December. So we've had about 720,000 participants this year across the globe in 21 countries. To date, I think the number is around 70 million plus, and that will go much further north as we get through our years. So we'll have a pretty good sense of where we are come February, March of next year. But it's been a great campaign. I think the conversations that I've had with men and their partners and families have been some of the best I've had to date. It's actually been fairly personal, talking about their particular issues as well as some of the reasons that they're involved in Movember. So I'm really excited about that development because the men's health conversation is finally gaining traction, at least within the U.S. context. Yeah, we're in the middle of wrapping all that stuff up, but last we looked at the numbers a couple of weeks ago. We had about 80,000 articles about Movember during the month of and leading into the month. And the number of impressions typically runs in the couple tens of millions in terms of what we see, and that could be anywhere from our work with some of our corporate partners like Harry's or Adidas to our own media pieces, particularly whether it be print media, online media, and or TV or radio-based media. We've seen most of our organic growth in the last several years from social. I mean, we grew up as a social entrepreneur in terms of how we looked at raising funds and really driving grassroots fundraising. It's not something we've done, through Facebook itself. Obviously, as Facebook and Twitter and everything else has evolved, we're continuously looking at how do we better engage our individual community members through the different types of technologies they use. We actually added Snapchat this year as something we're looking at as well. But the real challenge with that from our perspective is when you look at social media, and we've grown up in that environment, we've been around since 2003, and if you actually look at when Facebook was founded, it was actually 2004. So even in our early days, it was fairly new as a platform. And when you look at the environment now, there's just an explosion of different ways to communicate with audiences. And I think one of the challenges that any charitable organization has is where are your individual community members living? Where are they having conversations? But at the same time, not trying to do too much and be across too many platforms because your message gets diffuse. You actually don't have the ability to really kind of coalesce around where you're trying to have the conversation yourselves. During the month and leading up to the month, I mean, typically we look at campaign as a 90-day cycle around Movember. But in the last couple of years, particularly the last 18 months, we've moved to taking a look at the foundation and the work that we're doing in the foundation. And that's the actual brand around the campaign. Yes, there's a campaign around growing mustaches and creating awareness and educating men and their families and their partners about men's health issues. But when you look at the conversation we need to have, it's actually 12 months long. So the campaign is always going to be a major initiative for us in terms of our fundraising because it's been so successful in the last several years in particular. But when you look at the conversation we're trying to have with the Movember Foundation and men's health in general, that's something that's going to move to a 12-month cycle. So strategically, from the campaign perspective, we have seen it grow. And we've had, last year we had about just under 1 million Movember participants. This year it's a little bit lower than that. But if you look at the conversation we're having with men, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, one of the big challenges was just getting the conversation out there, getting men to actually understand not only what Movember is, but what are some of the issues that men face. And prostate cancer, testicular cancer, the two male-specific cancers. Prostate cancer is the second leading cause of death in men for cancer. And so just educating men on that and understanding the risks that they have, that's been something that we've seen actually grow quite significantly. So when you are out talking to media or you're out talking to the community now about Movember and the campaign, they now associate that with prostate and testicular cancer. And particularly new initiative in the U.S. context is we're moving into men's mental health. We've been in mental health since 2006 in Australia and New Zealand. We've invested over $70 million in those two countries as well as Canada since 2012. And as we look at the landscape here in the U.S., there's a huge need, and we think we can help support that need by moving into men's health, men's mental health as well. From a from the campaign perspective, it definitely ebbs and flows with the year. I think one of the challenges we have is that being an organization that's focused on November, Thanksgiving is something that's pretty unique to the U.S. Context, and that always, when you think about the consumerism around that particular day, you get Black Friday and you have Cyber Monday, and now we have Giving Tuesday, which is trying to take some of that conversation back to what are we thankful for. I think you see a lot of challenge in that for any charitable organization, particularly even within Giving Tuesday. I mean, the numbers are up this year, but still, when you think about it, it's coming on the heels of two of the biggest consumer days in the U.S. It's a real challenge. So the conversation in the end, that awareness, is what we're really trying to drive, and we're really proud of the conversation that's happening now. When you go and talk to someone in the media, they know what Movember is. They know some of the statistics around what men are facing, and it actually is quite nice. We don't have to sit there and talk about 1 in 7 men are going to be diagnosed with prostate cancer. They already know that, and they're bringing that forward as well. We look at awareness and perception. So every 2 years, we do a consumer study, both Gen Pop as well as our loyalists and our community members, to understand exactly how are we talking to our loyal community members, those that come back year over year and are engaged for either personal reasons or because it's fun, but also general population. If you look at the awareness and perception of Movember, that's definitely increased. I mean, if you were to ask me 4 years ago what people thought Movember was in the United States context, they would have just said a bunch of guys growing mustaches. There was no causal link between the actual work we've been doing since 2003. If you ask that same question, and we'll be doing some market research in the new year, if you ask that question now of the general population, I think people have a much clearer understanding. So I would anticipate, and I do anticipate, those numbers around awareness and perception of Movember to actually increase. And that is a good lead indicator for us to say the conversation is now getting out there. It's not just about Movember, the brand and the foundation, the work that we do, but it's that the conversation is actually starting to move into the general population around men's health. The three foundations that we support, obviously, is the Movember Foundation. That actually is the umbrella organization that manages all of the fundraising and distribution of funds to any of our men's health partners in any of the 21 countries. So the Movember Foundation itself actually funds research at the global level across prostate cancer, testicular cancer, and men and boys' mental health. Within the U.S. context, we work with the Prostate Cancer Foundation and with Livestrong. So those have been our 2 men's health partners since we moved here to the States in 2007. Just this past month, in November, we actually announced our 3rd partnership, which is the Prevention Institute out of Oakland, California, and they're going to be the coordinating agency that will be helping us on the mental health space. So we actually commissioned them as we looked at the space about 18 months ago. We started asking the question as the campaign continues to grow, as the conversation happens. When we look at our holistic viewpoint of both physical and mental health and well-being, how do we start moving into space? We actually worked with them to produce a landscape report to say, what does the U.S. mental health landscape look like, and where can Movember lend its support? So they're our 3rd official men's health partner now in the United States. And so when you look across the landscape, it's not only are we working with PCF, the Prostate Cancer Foundation, on research around prostate cancer, but also we're funding research at the global level around prostate cancer. So there's an initiative underway, which we call the Global Action Plan, which is a complement to the work that we're doing with the Prostate Cancer Foundation. So the idea behind that is that at a global level, we're bringing together minds around the issue of prostate cancer and asking them to collaborate to move to an answer quicker, at the same time doing the same model within the U.S. context with PCF. So hopefully we're advancing towards finding a cure for prostate cancer in a quicker time frame by looking at a global initiative as well as something that's specific to the U.S. Often, we find that, particularly when you talk about men's health and men in general, men are naturally competitive, whether it's fantasy football or it's March Madness. Bringing men together and giving them an opportunity to quite frankly use something like the mustache to generate a fun conversation at the outset then gets men to actually engage in the conversation about the more serious issues that we're trying to tackle together. So when you look at the team environment, whether that be a corporate team or whether that be a community-based team, it could be a bunch of guys who play flag football on the weekends or play softball. Really what we're trying to do is to understand exactly how men have conversations and then leverage that into what Movember is about, which is having conversations about fundraising or mustaches or making fun of your buddy who has an awkward mustache and who's going to have the more glorious mustache by the end of the month, and making it fun for those individual men to engage in a team-based environment. And we find that obviously when someone's part of something bigger than themselves, whether it be Movember as an idea or as a team at their work or a team in their community, they end up raising more money because they're more engaged in the conversation. It's something that happens throughout the 90 days between October and December. They're having a conversation about men's health on a more holistic basis and, quite frankly, all the time. So in the end, leveraging this idea of creating that team-based environment really actually drives fundraising for us. In terms of fundraising, on average, what we see when someone's part of a team, and we have a lot of messaging, whether it be via social or through our EDMs that we send out to the community as they're getting involved in that Movember for that year, around building a team and ultimately driving that conversation. What we see on average is about $30 more per funds raised when someone is part of a team from when they're not, when they're on their own. So we always encourage people, to go out and find team. Even my team is made up of men in my life and women in my life from when I was a kid in high school through what I do today. So I have friends from all across my life, and it's actually a good opportunity for me to start communicating with them again and having a conversation. And again, that $30 extra, if you extrapolate that over the hundreds of thousands of people that we have participating in a given year, it's a huge number for us. So it's something we strongly encourage, particularly when someone is signing up, to re-engage in the team that they're already a part of, start a new team, encourage people to join their teams. We have a whole series of tools in their MoSpace, which is basically their Facebook page or their what used to be the MySpace version of the page, where you have all these tools to help recruit individuals. So it's very point and click, getting the message out there and trying to recruit people to your team. We look at our corporate partners, we look for a couple different things. One is where are they talking to their community? What kind of reach can they provide in terms of the Movember message out to someone we might not be able to talk to? So it runs the gamut. So we look for communities and partners that are talking to women more than they are to men. Tom's is a perfect example of that. Tom's, when you look at their consumer makeup, it's skewed definitely towards women, but that's a conversation we want to have. And obviously they want to have a conversation with men as well, so it works quite well in terms of the DNA fit, in terms of who we want to be talking to, because oftentimes women are the decision makers when it comes to healthcare. And oftentimes they're the ones that encourage men to take action when they have a health problem. So that's a great partnership for us, is to work with someone who's already talking to women to get the message out there about the risks that men in their lives face. You look at Harry's, and they're very leveraged in social media and how they're having the conversation. They're very nimble in terms of what they do, in terms of how they put their product on the market. It's great for us because they can react super quick. A lot of our planning around the campaign is largely locked, and we're nimble to certain degrees, but some of our partners like Harry's can move a lot quicker than us and help get the message out there. And then you have some of the more traditional partners where, Barbasol has been a great partner for us this year, and they're heavily leveraged in doing radio commercials, which is just not a medium that a lot of people think about when they think about Movember, because we don't spend a lot of money in that space. We spend actually zero. But Barbasol has a huge campaign that they put on the radio spots. So when we're trying to communicate to other individuals, whether it be at a different type of sporting event on the radio that people might be listening to, Barbasol is there to talk about Movember and their work. So it's pretty much, it runs the gamut. It doesn't have to sit in a particular space. We actually look to fill out a lot of the different ways we can reach an audience via the different platforms for media. Tom's actually been a partner of ours for 5 years, our fifth campaign together. So beyond the media reach, the engagement of their audience, looking for the product that works best with what we're trying to do, and they fit that space really well. So does Harry's, so does Seven for All Mankind, which is a jean company. You know, they work quite well. You can get away with a little mustache hit here and there and a really nice pair of high-end jeans, and it still works. You can do the boyfriend jean, and it really works in talking to women and having a mustache and then some hang tags around what Movember is and the causes we support. So we're always looking for on-pack or on-product. I think the real challenge, though, is doing that authentically and doing that the right way. You never want to fall victim to this idea of just having a mustache everywhere, or having brown, which is the Movember official color, or blue, which is the official color of prostate cancer, as being the one thing you put out there. I think products are important because it helps deliver the message year-round about what Movember is through a logo or an icon or a pair of Tom's shoes. But in the end, it's making sure that people come back and they actually connect with what we're trying to do. So there's a balance between putting a product out there with a mustache and having that conversation year-round, with really trying to drive to getting people to participate in Movember. So we work with each partner to create that balance, saying, hey, let's create a really cool collaboration that people will want, while at the same time talking about how they should involve and sign up for Movember. 2015 is going to be a busy year. We had probably, I think, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, our most successful media campaign that I've seen since I've been here, and even prior to me joining the organization. So we look at, obviously, leveraging off of that and building that piece out and going bigger. With respect to the campaign, it's just doing it better. I think we did a great job this year. I think the team executed against a strategy that was quite sound. But when you look at the conversation, and this is a lot of what I hear from corporates as well as community members when I'm on the road, is we need to be talking about men's health year-round. And so when you go to a corporate where they have a health and wellness program and they want to be talking about men's health throughout the year, how do we do a better job in working with them to create that communication? So that's going to be a big piece outside of the campaign that we focus on starting in 2015, is really how do we engage men in a mental health conversation, for instance, because mental health just doesn't happen 5 days a year. It happens year-round. Men are struggling with problems that they have, and when they have an issue that's physically based or mentally based, they should go take action. One of the big initiatives that we are going to be focusing on in 2015 as well is healthy lifestyle and living. And we have this community-based initiative called Move. It's been around for a couple years now. And the hope is that we can bring it forward and actually make it part of the year-round campaign, which is encouraging men and women to engage in exercise, because we know that there are benefits to exercising throughout the year, whether it be physical benefits and, quite frankly, mental health benefits. If you're stressed at work, go for a 15-minute walk. How many times do we hear that? And oftentimes, getting that conversation out there and engaging men and women in a year-long discussion around being healthier will help drive some of the initiatives around physical and mental health and well-being.